Did you know that over 2.6 million Australians collectively withdrew $38 billion from their superannuation funds during the pandemic? With this money being spent on gambling, food, and furniture, ranking among the top 3 reasons for these withdrawals, with gambling being at the top of that list. Welcome to Dollars and Dreams, the podcast designed to empower you to take control of your personal and business finance. You know, the very thought of money and finance can often send chills down your spine and stir up fear of the unknown. But let's change that narrative together. Through this podcast, my goal is to not only to provide you with useful information, but also to inspire and motivate you to take action towards your own financial goals. Let's rewrite your money story together. Welcome to today's episode of Dollars and Dreams. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about superannuation and the consequences that we have when we pull money out of superannuation prior to us retiring. As you know, and you've probably heard me talking about it, superannuation is there for retirement, and it's there to give you the lifestyle that you want in retirement, and it is there to provide you with your wages when you're no longer working. And of course, when most people retire, the lack of wages is the thing that they struggle with, because through your working life, income is coming into your bank account on a regular basis. And of course, when you retire, you have a lot of expenses going out, and you need to manage that money that you have from when you stop working through to when you leave this world. So you probably remember that superannuation, you can't get your money out until you reach what's called your preservation age. Now, for most of us, that's pretty much 60 years of age. There is one very small group that can get it out at 59 at the moment. But look, let's face it, most of us are going to be 60 before we can get our superannuation out. When you reach the age of 60, you need to have retired to get your money unless you've reached the age of 65. And at the age of 65, you can continue to work and start to get a pension payment or withdraw your money from your superannuation. There are some limited circumstances when you can get money out of your super fund prior to reaching those conditions. Getting your money out before you've reached that preservation age generally relies on a couple of things. You can get it out on medical grounds, you can get it out on compassionate grounds. You can have money released for the first home buyers super saver scheme. You can also get money out if you are permanently disabled. So there are a few reasons, and you have to make an application to the trustee of your superannuation fund to be able to withdraw those money prior to what we call the condition of release. The problem came about when COVID hit, because the government changed the rules and allowed all of us to take out two amounts of up to $10,000 each. So a lot of people made an application to their superannuation fund to withdraw that $10,000, and a lot of people did both applications. So they ended up withdrawing $20,000 out of their super funds. And that is not an issue if it was for the reasons that it was there, because people lost their jobs and it was there so that people didn't become homeless or they didn't have a lack of funds to survive. But unfortunately, of the 3.5 million applications that came about for release of super, there was a significant amount of that money that was withdrawn, and it was up to $38 billion that came out of superannuation. And a lot of that went to things that weren't necessary, because people saw it as an opportunity to get money out of super. And as we know, people have that mindset that they don't understand why they can't have that money in superannuation, because it's their money. And the rules of superannuation do that to protect us from ourselves, because, of course, if we could get our money out of superannuation, we would do exactly what a lot of people did when COVID hit, and they could get that $20,000 out. So here's some of the stats. 64% of the money that was withdrawn from super funds went on clothing, furniture, restaurants, alcohol, and gambling. So you can see that most of those didn't use that money for its intended purposes, which was to pay the mortgage, provide food for yourself and your family, and replace the income that you'd lost because COVID had hit. 22% and only 22% went on essentials. So that means that 78% of the money withdrawn from super did not go on essentials. 14% did use those funds to pay down debts. And that could be a good thing. I'm not saying that's not a bad spend of that money at the time, because, of course, if you lost your job because of COVID, that 14% that people that use the money to pay down debt may very well have done that so that they didn't have to find the money. So of that 100% of money that came out, 36% of it went on to what I would call essential things. So there's the essential day-to-day livings and paying down debt. 64% of that money went on something that wasn't essential. And of course, as we know, when we pull money out of superannuation, we lose the benefits of compounding interest. So I've just done a quick calculation, it's nothing too much. So my calculation is, if you pulled that $20,000 out of your superannuation fund when COVID hit, I'm going to make the assumption that these people had, let's say 30 years left before retirement, and that $20,000 was invested for those 30 years at 8% return. That would have meant that those people would have had somewhere in the vicinity of close to $200,000 more in their superannuation fund when they retired. Now, you might say $200,000 is not a huge amount of money, but when the cost of living and things that are calculated with how much you need in superannuation is based on a comfortable retirement, which is something like about $695,000, that's talking about a third of what you're anticipated that you will need in retirement. The Australian Institute of Family Studies found a survey that 35% of people who participated in the withdrawal of those funds from their super said they withdrew the money even though they had no change in their personal circumstances. So that is 35% of the people that withdrew money had no change in their personal circumstances. They had no reason to get that money out of superannuation unless they needed it for something else. Now, of course, one of the conditions was for the release of that money is that you said that it was needed for your day-to-day living. The government has started a campaign to try and ensure that those people needed the money so that it can be put back in. The other thing that I guess people weren't really quite aware of is that when that $10,000 was pulled out of superannuation, it actually then formed part of your taxable income because, of course, if you're under the age of 60 and you pull money out of superannuation, it does form part of your taxable income. So not only did you pull out money for yourself and your family to probably waste, but you also contributed to the tax office's revenue. AMP reports that most of those withdrawals happened between April 2020 and June 2020. 38% of the money that was pulled out in that 3-month period when COVID first hit was spent in the first fortnight of being received. So that goes back to what I was saying before, that it wasn't pulled out for the purposes that it was designed for. And most of the people that pulled these out were younger people because they could see that they had a lot of years before they could get their hands on this money. People were buying new cars, people were doing lots of other things with the money other than what it was intended for. So leaving for a moment the money that was pulled out in COVID, because hopefully that is now a one-off and hopefully that will never happen again. But the thing to remember is that 500,000 young Australians withdrew everything from their superannuation fund and left a balance of zero. Now, those people, having done that, you can't change what's happened, and they've probably spent it on things that it didn't need to be spent on, but they now need to get that money back into their superannuation fund and make up the lost interest that's been there through compounding interest. The reason that I say that they need to work at getting that back into their superannuation fund is that whilst it was only 20,000, as we said before, it's potentially could be up to about 200,000 that they have lost from their superannuation. So the idea now for anybody who had participated in that withdrawal is to find some strategies to get those funds back into superannuation over and above what you would have done. So the strategies, of course, which we've talked about plenty of times, is the salary sacrifice arrangements that you can do with your employer. Salary sacrifice arrangements reduce your income, therefore you pay less tax, which means that the tax office is helping to recontribute to your superannuation. You can take advantage of the government co-contributions if you're a low income earner. You can do contribution splitting with your spouse if they have more money and have an opportunity to take advantage of some of the other tax provisions that are there, such as the carry forward concessional contributions, where you can catch up on that 27,500 as it currently stands into your superannuation. And it is important that you put a strategy in place so that you can put those funds back in. Otherwise, when you go to retire, you're not going to have the lifestyle that you probably had hoped to have in retirement. Most people, unless they are actively participating in growing their superannuation, will get to retirement age and may not be able to live the life that they want to live. And of course, here at Got Money Honey and jenrichardson.co, part of what I want to do is educate people so that they know the very small steps that need to be taken to increase their wealth for retirement. So there's things like passive investments that will give you, interest or dividends, and they're important because a passive income is income that you generate when you don't have to work for it. And retirement is all about having passive income streams and in conjunction with your pension. So it is important, if you were one of those 3.5 million people that pulled their money out of superannuation, that you now put a strategy in place to recoup those lost savings. So let's look at when you can also pull money out of superannuation. And as I said before, you can pull it out once you reach certain conditions, and that's the preservation age, and you've met the condition of between 60 and 65 that you've retired. You can also pull out money if you are going to pass away in the next 12 to 24 months, if you're permanently incapacitated, or the other one that we see quite often is medical reasons. So you can pull money out of your superannuation provided you can get your trustee of your superannuation fund to agree that those medical conditions are something that needs to be done for your own health and safety. Mostly those things are for surgery, if you can't afford surgery, or for equipment if you need wheelchair or aids like that to help give you a lifestyle that you can't do any other time. So treatment of your own medical conditions as well as any dependents that you have. Modifications to your home if, say, you became constricted to your movements, or you need to get aids put in to give you balance, or wheelchair for ramps and things like that. You can have modifications to your accommodation as well as your car. So if, for example, you've become that you are wheelchair bound and you obviously need to get a different car, you can apply to get your superannuation out. You can also get your superannuation out for palliative care for you and or one of your dependents. For death or funeral expenses associated with one of your dependents. The only other thing is that's not medically related is if it is a forced closure on your home. So if you're at risk of losing your family home, so not an investment property, but if you are risking the loss of your family home through foreclosure by your bank, you can also then apply to release money from your superannuation. So let's go back to the medical reasons, because that's the one that we see most people will make the application on. Medical reasons are wide and varied, so they're not necessarily life-saving, although they do have to be that they will impact your health. We see lots of people that take money out for breast reductions, and that can be because it's been deemed by your medical practitioner that it's causing back complaints. And of course, we know that women that have larger breasts also have a lot more back injuries and things like that, and back pain. So you can get it released for that. Again, even if they're released for medical reasons, it is still going to form part of your taxable income, and you will pay tax on that release. One of my staff members here, and I just want to relay this, and I do have Sharon's permission to discuss this with you. So Sharon is my financial advisor here at 123 Financial Group and with Got Money Honey. And a couple of months ago, she had gone to see a new dentist. Now, Sharon has a fear of dentists, so it had been a number of years that she had been since she'd visited. So she joined in this new dentist, and he went through, and there's a significant amount of dental work that needed to be done, and it can be done over time. But this dentist actually said to Sharon, oh, you can get the money for the dental treatments withdrawn from your super under medical grounds. Now, obviously, being that Sharon is a financial advisor, she knows the impact of pulling that $10,000 out that you can do for medical reasons, and the impact that that would have on her retirement lifestyle and the value of her superannuation fund. So, of course, she said to the dental staff, no, that means that I would have to then recontribute $10,000 plus the lost savings. But the dental practice kept pushing and pushing, because obviously, finding the money that she needs for this dental treatment that she needs is quite significant. So the dental administration team obviously pushed her because they want to get the funds in, because, regardless of what you think of dentists and any other occupation, they're a business. They need income in to pay wages, rent, products and things like that. So from their point of view, they need the consumer to pay them, and pay them as quickly as they can. Now, Sharon had wanted to negotiate a couple of years plan where she would pay so much, get a certain lot of the treatment done, then pay another lot, get another lot of treatment done. And it would take a couple of years to do that. But obviously the administration staff at this dental practice want their money, because money is what makes businesses run. And so they kept pushing her quite significantly to try and withdraw the money from her superannuation fund so that she could fast track her dental treatment. And of course, being a financial advisor, she stood her ground and explained to these staff why that was a bad decision for anybody, and of course told them that they probably shouldn't be giving advice which impacted people's super, without also then telling them that they should go and seek financial advice. Because of course, as consumers, we look at the short term, not the long term, and that is a normal process if you're not in the financial advice space. So it is important that before you do anything that impacts your superannuation fund, that you consider the long-term effects of that. And as I said, the long-term effects are things that, the $200,000 that I talked about with the young people that had 30 years to work, pulling out that $20,000, compound interest at only 8%, and some super funds some years have more than 8% return on that investment. So potentially the $10,000 or $20,000 that Sharon could have got out for her dental treatment, that could have impacted and made a huge difference to her superannuation. So if you ever think that pulling money out of your superannuation is a great choice, you really do need to look at the long-term consequences of doing that. So consider things like, if you do pull it out, how are you going to get that money back into superannuation so that your life in retirement isn't impacted? So look at other things such as salary sacrificing. You can look at a savings plan. Most places that have are wanting medical treatment, unless it's life and death, you've got time to save for it. You know, if you're the lady with the large breasts that has a lot of back pain because of it and you want to get a breast reduction done, the short answer is to pull it out of your superannuation if you can. But the longer approach would be to save for that, or even potentially look at the options of a short-term loan, because you can then pay that back nice and quickly, and you can put strategies in place to pay down that debt without having that huge impact that superannuation does. And particularly when you've got a lot of years to work, pulling money out of superannuation is a really bad decision, because the compounding interest that you will lose in all those years between now when you pull it out and when you retire will have a significant impact. It's also important to remember that with your superannuation, that its principal purpose is to provide you in retirement. It is not for cash flow in your working years. And the thing that I say to everybody when I'm working with them is most people now will potentially have a lifespan of up to 90 years. I mean, there's a lot of people that live well into their 90s. So if you have a lifespan of 90 years, we break that up into thirds. And so what I say to people is the 0 to 30 years, you know, you're a kid, you're getting your career done, you're maybe saving for a deposit on a house and things like that. So that first 30 years, you're not doing anything to look forward to building assets and building passive income streams, things like that. 30 to 60 is the years that we pay off our debt, we get our home loan and then pay it off. We start to build for our future and we build assets that will give us income in retirement. 30 to 60, which is the next third of our life, is spent then using up those assets that we acquired in that 30 years. Now, when I sit with most people and I look at those middle 30 years and I go, well, these are the 30 years that you have time to get your family home, you get your family established, you have your children, and we all know the expense that comes with children. So really in that 30 years, the 30 to 45, you're just getting your life sorted. You're building your first home, you're paying off your home. That then leaves you really only from 45 to 60 to build wealth for retirement. So if you drain your superannuation fund before that age of 45, and even after the age of 45, but that 45 to 60 then, which is your working years of building assets, including your superannuation and any investments that you want to help you through retirement, you are really pushing a bus up a hill. It's really very difficult, and you really do need to then work much, much harder to get enough into superannuation to survive those 30 years that you potentially have in retirement. So I guess my take from today is, even though we can all see all this money sitting in our superannuation fund, and we get our reports at least twice a year from our super fund, but of course now we're on apps and everything, and some of us hopefully are looking at our superannuation more often than every 6 months. When you see that bucket of money, I get that it is tempting to find any way to get it to give yourself money to spend now. If you are going to pull money out of your superannuation, you need to understand it's a trade-off of having it now against having it later on. Now, the reason that you can pull it out if you're terminally ill is because there is no later on. You need that money now. You need to go and make memories with your family before you pass away. So that is the reason that the government lets you get your money out prior to retirement. But if you're not terminally ill, your medical reasons aren't life and death, and there's an alternative, please do not pull money out of superannuation unless you really have to. I'm always banging on, as you know, about putting more into super rather than pulling money out of it. And for those people that gambled away their $10,000 or $20,000 that they pulled out in COVID, they were hoping to be better off. Most of them, unfortunately, the statistics say, weren't. The 64% people that spent their money on clothing, furniture, restaurants and alcohol, the money is gone. Now, saving for $10,000 to recoup that is a really difficult thing, and it does mean that you've got to make some sacrifices. So I just want you all to be very careful. Get advice before you pull any money out of superannuation and look if there is an alternative way of doing it. So that's all I'm going to cover off today. I know that's pretty hard statistics and things like that to hear, but from a financial advisor's point of view, when I hear those statistics that $36 billion was pulled out of superannuation in COVID and 3.5 million Australians reduced their superannuation, I am just flabbergasted. I just don't think people look at the big picture. And I'm here to educate you and help you understand that. Impacts and things that you do now have a huge impact later on in your financial life. So think before you do it. Reach out to your financial advisor, or of course, if you want to know more or need any help, reach out to us here at jenrichardson.co. I hope that my podcast today didn't destroy too many people's hopes, and I hope some of you, if you are part of that 3.5 million Australians that pulled money out of super, can think of now of strategies or think beyond that first step and look at ways that you can rebuild your superannuation balance so that your retirement is all that you want it to be, not all that you can afford it. So thanks for joining me today. I'd love to hear if any of you have put some strategies in place to rebuild your superannuation, or if you've looked at alternatives rather than pulling money out of your superannuation. So that's it. We look forward to seeing you next week over at Dollars and Dreams. Remember, the advice shared in Dollars and Dreams is general in nature and it does not consider your own personal circumstances. Dollars and Dreams is for educational purposes only and should not be relied upon to make investment or financial decisions. If you need more help, please reach out to a financial advisor for tailored personal advice. Don't forget to click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future content. And please leave me a review. Your feedback really helps me to reach other people chasing their money dreams. You can find me over on Facebook and Instagram to connect with me. You will find the link in the bio or head over to my website at jenrichardson.co where you will find free content and learning tools.